Hello again, I am Blunty, watching the time tick down now till the Switch 2 launch day. Not long now, is it? Today we're talking Switch 1 OG games that need, nay, deserve, Switch 2 updates, patches, or full-on additions. So I want to hear what favourites of yours you want to see get some love on the new beastie, the Switch 2. Because one of the things I'm personally excited for, outside of what new games the Switch 2 generational jump in power will offer up, is going back and replaying some of the best OG Switch games, but only better this time. We already know that several titles are immediately getting so-called Switch 2 Edition updates at launch, including upgrades and enhanced features, and in some cases even significant new content drops. These Switch 2 Edition style updates are going to be paid, but some, like the upgraded versions of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, are available for free to Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack members who can download these upgraded versions without any additional cost. But outside of that, we're also seeing some games get much simpler free patches, free for everybody that is, to enhance their functionality on Switch 2. Mario Odyssey is an example of that. It's getting a resolution bump and a HDR mode, so that'll be sweet. But among a few others, we've now started to see some gameplay out of a few of these games running on Switch 2, like the free update for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, promising a proper 1080p mode in handheld, solving the scaling problem for this game that I spoke about in a previous video. And the patch notes also mentioned high-resolution TVs. Presumably that means a 4K upscaled output as well. And in some sample footage they released today, they were showing off the new 60 FPS frame rate target. It is not, in fact, locked to 60 FPS, as some people have discovered as they frame by frame through it. It drops a few frames here and there, but I'm not going to bother about doing any comparisons of my own until we can capture our own footage of that update, not using Nintendo's cherry-picked samples, because there are some developers I trust and some developers I do not trust when it comes to being honest about how their games represented. Game Freak or not, one of the ones I trust, despite my decades-long love for Pokemon itself. Game Freak, they're a bit of another issue. But both the resolution boost and the frame rate fix are sorely needed for these games, which, despite looking like complete garbage, somehow still managed to also run like complete garbage on the OG Switch. It was legitimately uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable to play Violet at launch, as the frame rate was so eye-searingly bad and inconsistent, and it was just horrible. So I'm really looking forward to finally getting to my Scarlet playthrough that, to date, I could never quite bring myself to start because I remember how miserable it was trying to play through Violet in the first place. I mean, I like the game mechanically. It's not my favorite Pokemon game ever, but it was fine. It was pretty good. But it is physically difficult to play because of just the horrible performance of it all. And I've owned both versions since launch, Scarlet and Violet. I bought one physical, one digital, so I've been waiting on my Scarlet playthrough for a very long time now. Unfortunately, Violet and Scarlet are about the only ones on the list that we know about getting free patches already that I care much about, or care much about replaying at least. So I've been thinking about some other Switch 1 games that really need patches for the Switch 2, or, deserve patches at the very least. Games that I'd like a nice excuse to put on my to-replay list in even mildly enhanced forms. Like, for example, Pokemon Legends Arceus, which I think is a much better game than Scarlet and Violet. But like Scarlet and Violet, although not as severely affected with performance issues, it too could benefit greatly from a resolution fix and frame rate upgrade. But no mention at all of a similar patch for this game yet, even though the very next game we're getting is from the Legends series. Maybe they're just holding it back so they can use it as a promotional tool before the launch of the other Legends game that we're getting. I don't know. I really hope we get a patch for this though. An OG Switch game that I found just literally unplayable at launch because of its terrible frame rate issues was Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, which was infuriating, because that game was actually made for the Wii U, so not running properly on the Switch even was just Clown Town horse crap. Koei Temco, not exactly known for their games that run well. A lot of very good games come out of these guys, but most of them run like trash. They're a bit like Game Freak in that way. Although that said, opening the game again for the first time since launch to capture some new gameplay for this very video, it seems some patches along the way did help it out a bit. It seems to be running much more stably than it ever did, or at least I remember it running. But it'd still be much more desirable to be able to play this high-action game at 60 FPS instead, And there is a sequel coming for this game, or a prequel, because I think it takes place earlier in the timeline, but it's very, Zelda games and timelines, they get confusing. But, there's a new one coming out, so maybe they'll patch this along the way as well. Then there's the likes of Animal Crossing New Horizons. While it has no use at all for 60 FPS, 60 FPS wouldn't make the game any more fun or any better or any more pleasant or anything. And resolution-wise, it's fine already. It already runs at 1080p in docked. It could use a fix for the scaling problem in handheld mode, because it is one of those games that's really nice in handheld to curl up with. So getting that sorted out for the Switch 2 would really be nice. But higher up on my personal list, although this might be helped without a patch at all, just due to the much faster storage and memory on the Switch 2, the load times are spectacularly miserable on the original Switch with this particular game. Interestingly though, it is one of those first-party and pretty popular and high-profile games from Nintendo without any news at all on a patch for the Switch 2 yet, which feels bizarre to me. What are they holding back for? What's going on? We've talked about this one before, more than once actually, but of course my very favourite and most played OG Switch game, by an order of magnitude I mean, literally thousands of hours, Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak absolutely deserves a resolution and frame rate fix at the very absolute minimum, if not a full-on Switch 2 Edition treatment, bringing the high-resolution textures and better lighting that we see in the ports that made their way to the other consoles. Because this game has no cross-play and no cross-save, etc, 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 it would be really nice to have just a kind of definitive edition sitting on the Switch where I have access to my my main save of, 1,700 hours. Then you got Skyrim, yet another game on the OG Switch I just found kind of unplayable. I've got it, I was really excited about getting it, and it literally made me motion sick to play it. The combination of terrible frame pacing and extremely limited first-person field of view had me quit this game in a literal cold sweat and motion-sick misery within 90 minutes of first booting it. This all happened on live stream, by the way. I was just like, nope, I feel sick. I'm going to throw up. I've got to stop. The stream over. Sorry. It was so disappointing. And I know some of you out there are probably typing right now, well, I played it without issue. Well, good for you. I'm happy for you, but I'm particularly sensitive to motion sickness in games with a very narrow field of views that present in first person, always have been, which is why I like to play first person games on PC, where I can make it much wider than the fixed FOV we often see on consoles. So yeah, at the very least we need a 60 FPS patch for this, and a wider FOV option would be really welcome too, or even just a full-on slider like we get on PC. The Outer Worlds, yet another game I found unplayable at launch, or very close to unplayable at least, on Switch, which was possibly the most upsetting incidence of this on the OG Switch, because I adore this game. It is one of my favorite games of all time, but it had severe performance issues in its Switch port when it launched. Those have since been fixed up for the most part with patches. It now at least runs nice and steadily, but yeah, it still looks just horrible, and the 30 FPS cap really does not do it any favors. Again, first person game, limited field of view. I would really be much more comfortable if this ran at 60 and we had a little bit wider field of view, or some options on that, or a slider. With a sequel coming out this year for this game, which I'm really excited about, I truly hope the original game's Switch port gets some love for those who want to do a replay on it, or for the people new to the game. They see the sequel, they get excited about the sequel, go, oh, what's this? I need to check this out. I should play the first game before the sequel arrives, and would like to do that on the Switch too. I really think it deserves better than what it is right now on Switch. I did live streamed replay of this game just a few weeks back on PC, in fact, and depending on the sequel's launch date, I'd love to squeeze in yet another replay through it, this time on the Switch 2, so I can at least get one full playthrough on the Switch port I paid for, because I've never actually finished the game on the Switch, because it's just, it's not great. So Sean Murray from Hello Games has been doing that thing he does for the last day or two, where he tweets out some obscure emoticons, which is a weird little tradition that heralds a new content patch and update for No Man's Sky. So I'm wondering, given the timing of this, if a Switch 2 update patch is on the way alongside this new content, whatever it is, or perhaps even a Switch 2 Edition DLC will be part of whatever is coming. The Switch port of this game is shockingly good for the resources the OG Switch has for a game like this, but this version also lacks a few features every other version has, like NPC settlements and perhaps more importantly for many, multiplayer. Although it does have access to the beta for multi-platform cloud saves already, and because I have access to that, I can freely move my PC save to the Switch and my Switch save to the PC, and back and forth and vice versa between those platforms pretty seamlessly. It's fantastic. I would love, therefore, to see the Switch 2 edition or a patch bring this port into lockstep with all the other versions and a feature-complete multiplayer-ready version, so, Switch 2 only players can finally fully, properly join the player community for this game. It's been a long time since I last played Minecraft, but it's still pretty relevant for many, and I'm occasionally considering coming back to it for another live stream world, but I'm told the current version for Switch is kind of crap, so that could probably do with a patch or a edition or whatever as well. That could be enough to bring me back just out of pure curiosity alone. And while this last one is pretty pie in the sky, I would love for the severely underrated, and I mean just massively underrated, DQ spin-off games, Dragon Quest Builders 1 and Dragon Quest Builders 2, to also get patches. They run great on the Switch already, nice and clean, 30 FPS, but I've also played the demos for these on the PlayStation board where it has 60 FPS, and it really is quite nice feeling these games that smoothly. They don't really need it as much as some other games I've been talking about today, but it'd be really nice. And this pair of games have set on my, I should replay those someday, part of my brain for a very long time now. I'd love a good excuse to push them up that list, and a Switch 2 update of some kind would be just the thing. So I pile all of this alongside my eagerness to revisit some of my GameCube favorites too, and the Switch 2 I think will be soaking up a lot of my game time, much like the original Switch did. Between the new originals, the incoming ports of new and old faves and updates and Switch 2 editions and GameCube games, the Switch 2 is promising quite a lot of value for me as a gamer. But yeah, updates to the games I've been talking about in this video, that would be just icing on the cake. So yeah, what else do you reckon? What else should be on this list of games that sort of really deserve another bite at the apple, or perhaps didn't shine quite as brightly as they should have from the first time around on the Nintendo Switch, and you feel like they deserve some more time in the light? Let me know down below. Thank you as always for watching. Thank you to the patrons who's above and beyond support. I really appreciate. I am Bloody, and we'll catch you next time.